With each day, each hour, each minute passing, we inch closer to the dark future, although to be honest, with how the real world is going at this point, you could argue that the dark future is kinda already here. But anyway, Cyberpunk 2077 is less than 2 months away, and last week during Night City Wire episode 3, we got a great new look at the massive size and scope of Night City, as well as the gangs that dominate the streets. We'll touch more on the latest episode of Night City Wire later, but right now I think everyone is wondering when the next episode is arriving and what it may or may not focus on. Interestingly, Kotaku supposedly published a now deleted article claiming that episode 4 would be the last, coming at the end of October, and would cover music, character creation, and vehicles, as well as including console footage. Now, what the source of this piece was is unknown, as it has been deleted, and why it's been removed is because it was not at all true. CDPR's global community lead, Marcin Mamont, pushed back on this article after it was posted on Reddit, responding by saying, "We have plans for more episodes to air with a lot of cool stuff to show." Personally, I think that there are at least 2 episodes left for this series pre-release, with one coming towards the end of October and one right before launch, which is where post-launch plans are discussed. At least that's my guess, but what we know for sure is that there is more than one episode left and music will be a featured subject. CDPR has also gone on the record recently confirming that console footage is coming closer to release, but it's not clear if this will come in a Night City Wire episode or somewhere else. Anyway, today we have a lot of new Cyberpunk 2077 information to break down. This includes more details on the adult quote-unquote naughty features being revealed, a new Gwent-sized minigame being teased, the revelation on Cyberpunk 2077 story length, further background on the NCPD's role in the game, a message from Cyberpunk creator Mike Pondsmith, some new images that have largely gone unnoticed, including some new footage coming from the Tokyo Game Show and another Japanese gaming event, and much more. Again, actually this is probably just the usual, a giant video with lots to discuss, but what's also the usual is me saying if you do go on to enjoy this content and want to show your support for videos like this, please consider hitting that like button, subscribing for more, and turning notifications on so you do not miss out on any new content. Also, if you want to further support this content, check out my Patreon, and make sure to get geared up for this upcoming game by getting the new Samurai or Wanted t-shirt designs. If you're interested in getting these Cyberpunk themed tees, there will be a link in the description down below. Nonetheless, the last few weeks certainly have been big with Cyberpunk 2077 gameplay reveals, and CDPR did not disappoint with what they showed during Night City Wire episode 3. While short, it was certainly sweet, and it really is unbelievable how this game has evolved since we first really saw it in that 2018 E3 gameplay demo footage. During my Night City Wire episode 3 live stream with many of you, I found myself quite literally gushing over the level of detail in Night City. It truly is an achievement with how far this game has come visually. Seeing V driving through torrential rainfall as he battles enemies is breathtaking. The weather effects look outstanding. But I won't stop there, because there is beauty with the distinct personalities of each district, like the Japanese culture that dominates Westbrook, or the disgusting dirty landfill in the Badlands, or the dozens of corporate skyscrapers which fill up city center. With this new Night City Wire footage, many have been comparing scenes from 2018 versus now, and it's obvious CDPR's continued expanding the size of Night City, but also took advantage of ray tracing features to really bring this world to life, something PC players with the new 30 series will likely get to see fully realized in their experience. Comparisons have also been made of Night City versus Los Santos, and while I understand the counter-argument will be that Grand Theft Auto 5 is a game that released a console generation ago in 2013, no other open-world AAA game has been able to top what Rockstar Games did 7 years ago, and it looks very likely that CDPR will provide us with a game that maybe finally surpasses and pushes the open world genre forward. The last game to do that was actually Rockstar Games with Red Dead Redemption 2, but in different ways. But besides the size or the beauty of this world, there was also a few important moments in this Night City Wire episode 3 footage that you may have missed, like our first look at the mysterious Takamura, who will very likely play a significant role in the main narrative of Cyberpunk 2077. My assumption right now is that Takamura will serve as a mentor for our protagonist V, who may end up taking on some of the Arasaka family who Takamura may or may not have had history with. Also in this footage, we got a great shot at the design of a Max TAC officer, and if you have forgotten, the special police officers of the NCPD are specifically tasked with taking down the extremely dangerous cyber psychos who are suffering from an advanced cyberpsychosis. One really neat detail that I appreciated about the new Cyberpunk 2077 gangs trailer was that with each gang shown, we heard NPC dialogue from throughout the game which mentioned said gang. So for example, most of the NPC voices, we don't know their identities yet, but Johnny Silverhand does have a couple of his lines thrown in, like when he states his deep hatred for the 6th Street gang and mentions that the Voodoo Boys treat Pacifica like Haiti 2.0. Speaking of this famous rocker boy, during the club scene we get a first-person view as him, likely indicating that this is a brain dance, but Johnny can be seen sitting and drinking with a blonde doing certain things to him that would get this video demonetized if I mentioned it. Additionally, in between shots, if you slow things down, Johnny Silverhand actually pops up a few times watching us as we do certain activities like eating food or visiting a Ripper Doc. Up to this point, the only Ripper Doc that we've been introduced to is Victor Vector, and remember, this is where Cyberware gets installed. But now we see V visiting 2 more Ripper Docs, one that works for the Mox and another that I believe is with the Valentinos gang. A quick rundown on some of the other observations that I had. We get a look at some of these shows that will make up the entertainment side of this universe, things that will be seen on screens like Night City's version of Jim Cramer, or your typical news reporter and opinion hosts. We get likely our first look at a game over screen when V confronts Maelstrom gang members, with our system shutting down and a message popping on the screen that says flatlined. Weirdly, one of the celebrities that is briefly shown, Ziggy Q, who appears to be a talk show host, has an audience of animatronics cheering him on. Just a little strange. While there may not be dual wielding with weapons, it appears we can still have a good time with dual wielding some shots as we have fun in a club. We again get a closer look at the design of a Militech soldier and another look at the world map of Night City, although it for some odd reason is missing the massive orbital airspace center which is located on the coast of the city. It might just be that way because this map overview was focused on gangs that are within the actual city. Throughout the first trailer, a noticeable focus is on the mayoral race that is currently ongoing, with Mayor Lucius Rhine being shown speaking and one of the candidates, Weldon Holt, campaigning. Another candidate, Peralez, is shown on a billboard with a gun. Mysterious Nomad Girl pops up again, including a Nomad guy, which might be romance options. The Valentinos show off some custom wheels, maybe being an example of just some of the unique faction-related vehicles that we can obtain and earn. Also, we might have gotten our first look at the end of the game's world, in which we can see a highway is cut off with a massive canyon separating both sides. There also is a pretty big ramp, which I guess you could take to your death. Lastly, just a few shots that personally stood out to me was V zooming through the nighttime streets in a golden jacket on a motorcycle, or the 6th Street gang members shooting or having us shoot what appears to be cardboard cutouts of Weldon Holt's head, or when V is confronted by what appears to be a Tiger Claws gang member who is dressed in Arasaka gear attacking V with 2 glowing red blades. Definitely one of the massive highlights to come from this reveal event was system requirements being revealed, and to the surprise of many, it doesn't seem PC players will have to race out for new graphic cards or other pieces of hardware, because Cyberpunk 2077 only requires for a processor of an Intel Core i5-3570K or AMD FX 8310. For graphic cards, an NVIDIA GeForce GTX 780 3GB or AMD Radeon RX 470. So yeah, not as high-end as some may have assumed would be the case, like myself, although to get the best experience, definitely aim for the recommended specs or higher. Also, surprising is the size of the game, only requiring 70GB of storage, which I'm certain there will be a sizable day one update, but this is certainly nowhere near the 200GB size some of us thought that was coming, which shows that CDPR is good at optimization, unlike other games in this industry in which 70GB is a typical frustrating update file size. And yes, I'm looking directly at Call of Duty Modern Warfare. But another thing that did come from this new reveal event was the mention of a website, and that being nightcity.love, which is real and features some new images and information. The website serves as a guide to Night City with a death counter at the top, updated throughout the day. There are also in-game ads that show up on the page promoting things like Arasaka's quote-unquote environmental protection work. the competitive mayoral race, with each candidate having a campaign poster featured, and a Bolshevik alcoholic drink that glows and features a giant health warning. Strong the Outer Worlds, it's not the best choice, it's spacer choice vibes here. There are also video advertisements that are featured on the page promoting things like an insurance company and real water. Again, this is all in-game, in-universe ads. The point is to put an emphasis on just how corporate Night City is with these ads and marketing. Anyway, as I said before, the page does give us background on Night City, including some history, with founder Richard Knight's legacy being cited near the top. Below that, we get insight on the ways of transportation in Night City. This includes walking, driving a car, using the N-Cart system, which in other words is fast travel posts, and lastly the Delamain AI cab service. We also have some small images that accompany this section highlighting the methods of transportation, but to the main meat of this webpage, we have new images and details for each district. Since we've already gone over each district's details in past news videos, I'm quickly going to skim through the contents highlighting what's new, like with City Center, which is the heart of Night City and features one mentioned place of interest, and that is the Seventh Hell Bar run by a former mercenary. City Center is considered safe by the NCPD, with them downplaying criminal activity happening in the alleys and side streets of downtown. The included new image shows the literal center of the city, which features a massive roundabout and giant skyscrapers that surround it. Watson's most notable stop is its Kabuki sub-district, which is said to have some of the best bargain hunting. Watson is considered extremely dangerous by the NCPD, with Kabuki mentioned as a location with lots of gang-related crime, and the image featured here shows off the district's industrial side. Haywood is home to City Hall, with city council members darting through meetings at Corporate Plaza. It also appears that a section of Haywood is partially hazardous, with the web page downplaying supposed rumors that Corporate Plaza was constructed on a radioactive landfill. The NCPD warning for Haywood cites the Valentino's gang as a major threat. Westbrook, one of the richer districts of Night City, features Japantown, said to be the entertainment hub of the district, and includes the nightclub Clouds, where one will find everything from braindance and beyond, catering to a pleasure seeker's every possible desire. Westbrook is said to have a minimal threat level by the NCPD, with the Tiger Claw's presence or crimes oddly downplayed. In the image featured, we get an overview of part of Japantown with the beautiful North Oak in the distance. Santo Domingo is supposed to be a representation of the middle class, with an emphasis being put on subdistrict Rancho Coronado's bedroom community, white picket fences, an immaculate green lawn surrounded by spacious homes, and an endless, breathtaking vista, which is a blatant lie. The featured image really gives you a sense of the poverty and struggle citizens that reside here deal with. But Santo Domingo's Capitan Calientes is said to be home to the best burrito in town. The district has a threat warning for the 6th Street Gang, which are former veterans that say they are protecting their neighborhood but are taking part in typical gang activity. Pacifica, the abandoned, never completed tourist trap of Night City, overrun with gang activity, has a catastrophic warning, with the NCPD not even bothering to patrol it, as the Voodoo Boys and the Animals control the territory. The district also deals with acid rain, something featured in one of the images and teased on Twitter by CDPR's lead quest designer Pavel Sasko, who stated that, "I feel you are about to love when it rains." Lastly, the outskirts of Night City, Rocky Ridge, is a mentioned location which was originally an attempt to construct a self-contained district in the desert east of the city. Streets were plotted out and houses built, ready to welcome the workers employed by the businesses located just next door. Unfortunately, those businesses went bankrupt shortly thereafter, and the neighborhood was abandoned. Now, Rocky Ridge is home to nomads, and the NCPD's warning cites the nomad gangs, which are known for stealing and ambushing travelers. Now, to the final part of this page, we have about 10 or so new images that we have not seen before. The first one is a view of some of the giant skyscrapers that we'll see as we race by, and an interesting fact, senior level designer Miles Tost revealed on Twitter that each of Night City's mega buildings has a unique color scheme, and we can actually see that here. In the next shot though, we get a view of the poverty just outside of City Center, with violence and destruction running rampant. As we move along with this shot, under a highway, you can really grasp just how massive these skyscrapers are, with advertisement and corporate logos on them. And actually, as we continue forward, much of these images really put a focus focus on showing how big this city is. With these lights glowing down the side of the road, it's also been revealed again by Miles Toast that the lights' colors change every second. The next image taken at night, I believe in the Watson district, you can see the factories at work with smoke polluting the air. Finally, we get a street view of, I believe, Westbrook with NPCs walking along, and then we have Santo Domingo with an active turf war underway with cars on fire, explosions rocking the ground, and bullets flying everywhere. And the last two images coming from this page, we get a good look at some of the lighting effects and Maelstrom gang members roaming about in Watson. But those are not the only images we have, because as most of you know, gaming personality or journalist Alana Pierce revealed that she would be featured in the game as an NPC. This is a deal or collaboration that I believe she mentioned happened all the way back in 2018. But her character, one of which can apparently only be accessed on the Nomad life path, possibly indicates that each life path has its own smaller exclusive content, which does kind of make sense. The next set of screenshots, first we have Jackie sitting at the Afterlife bar with V and talking with him. Thai subtitles are present. Following that, we have V talking with Judy Alvarez in Lizzie's bar, with Chinese subtitles and UI being present. Then we have the same shot from the 2018 gameplay demo in which the Trauma team arrives to save their client, I believe Sandra Dorset, but obviously the graphics have been greatly improved from 2018 to 2020, and this is yet another example of that, as also the UI in this scene is, I believe, in Japanese. To the last set of images, we have multiple shots of Japantown, the first showing an NPC with a jacket that makes clear that he is not a fan of corpos, but really something that I'm extremely impressed by is the beautiful Japanese culture being present right beside the disgusting poverty-ridden sub-districts that make up this world. You see that quite a bit in these screens, but in the next scene we have monks standing by a shrine. Then with the streets nearly empty, the Trauma team appears to be at work, possibly on a client. Even with things being mostly quiet, we see that some activity is happening deeper into Japantown, with shops up and running late at night as NPCs walk about. To the final two images, we can see much of the neon lights and lit billboards and other glowing objects, giving this district a distinct look at night. On the Japanese Cyberpunk 2077 Twitter account, we finally got our first look at the in-game render of Saburo Arasaka, the 158-year-old CEO of Arasaka, and yeah, I mean, he still looks pretty good for his age. There's also been some news coming from the Tokyo Game Show that reportedly in all versions of the game, Saburo Arasaka will speak only in Japanese, and that does fall in line with the lore of his character, although I do wonder if that changes if we obtain a translator chip. Now, to just a few pieces of news following Night City Wire Episode 3, Mike Pondsmith took to the Cyberpunk subreddit and wrote the following message to fans. I just want to say that you have no idea how weird it is to wake up, open my phone, and see all of you guys talking about being netrunners, solos, nomads, and other chumbas walking the mean streets of Night City, Malorians in hand, hanging with Johnny Silverhand, and taking on the Militech goons. I just wanted to take a sec to say thank you to all of you out there for your enthusiasm and creativity. Now back to your lives, Night City people. During the Tokyo Game Show, new Cyberpunk 2077 gameplay was showcased in Japanese. In the new footage, we see the encounter that V has with the Maelstrom gang, the same one that happened in the 48-minute gameplay demo all the way back in 2018, but obviously with updated visuals, and some of the character models have been improved, like on Dum Dum. Now, while you cannot understand what's being said because it is in Japanese unless you speak that language, take a quick listen and look to the scene here in 2020.
よし、本題に入るか。さてと、こいつがフラットヘッドだ。モデル MT-0D12。
確認したい。
しょうがねえな。俺が払えっつったら黙って払うんだよ。とにかくこいつが欲しければまずはエディを見せな。
落ち着け。ここに入ってる。
そんなすんなり出していいのか。からかいがいのないやつだな。
俺はチップを出し、あんたはボットを出す。それだけだ。簡単だろ。
ボース、最近のボーイスカウトじゃ交渉の仕方を教えてくれねえのか。そういや、 誰の使いか聞いてなかったな。お前のボスの名前を。
デショーン、エクスターデショーン。
エクスターデショーン。パシフィカの半分をめちゃくちゃにしたあのデブ。
ああ、おかげさまでピンピンして。
So that actually was not the only footage that was shown, because we see some new stuff not seen before, and this comes from Lizzie's bar, in which before V does his first brain dance, he talks with Evelyn Parker and Judy Alvarez. Again, take a listen and look to the new footage.
ちょっとやめてよ。ムズムズする。
よろしく、ジュディ。
BD はコンパイル済みよ。
どう？なんとかなりそう？
まだ生に近いけど、ま、大丈夫でしょ。
とにかく B が深く潜り込めるならいいわ。
じゃ、早速調整から始めようか。たまに舞い込んでくるジグジグストリートのどぎついポルノに比べたら全然余裕だから。
じゃあ早速潜って直に見てもらおうかしら。いいわね。
B はどう？生もののブレインダンス。これが初体験でしょ？
どうとでもなる。さっさと始めてくれ。
了解。
So one thing I will say about this footage is that further into it, one change has actually been made to this specific brain dance that Judy shows us, and it's actually a tribute to the late Kobe Bryant, with an NPC featuring a tattoo honoring him, which has a silhouette of himself, and the number 24, which he used for much of his Lakers career. Now, moving to yet another Japanese gaming event, we get even more gameplay, including some action, but first we have Dexter Deshawn, T-Bug, Jackie, and V meeting together to discuss the plan to steal Yorinobu Arasaka's precious chip that brings a certain rocker boy into our lives. This is pretty much the scene that was teased in the gig trailer played out, but of course in Japanese during Game Live 2020. Take a listen to this scene.
まあまあ、その通りだミスターウェルズ。デリケートな話をするからな。だがその前にミスター B に質問したいことがある。エブリン・パーカーの件はどうだった？
うまくいったと思う。彼女が記録した生ものの BD でコンペキプラザの中を歩き回れた。
手はずは私たちが整えておいた。作戦自体はシンプルよ。
具体的には聞かせてくれ。
まずはデラマンに乗ってコンペキまで行ってもらう。偽名を使って正面から堂々と入る。その後バグの手引きでホテルのサブネットに侵入しろ。
フラットヘッドも使うけど。
あとは頼信のペントハウスに忍び込みレリックをいただくだけだ。
当然隠密行動が基本よ。犠牲者ゼロが理想ね。いい？
バグが常時無線で援護する。何か質問はあるか？
大丈夫だ。
素晴らしい。
待てよ。ここに集まった肝心の目的がまだだ。
Now, the interesting thing about the gunplay on the screen is that this is likely, or well, it was, an extension of the weapons trailer that I believe we saw during Night City Wire Episode 2, and I'm not sure if this is originally cut gameplay, but either way, we do get some new action-packed gunplay scenes, with V wreaking havoc on his enemies, like him attacking a Wraith gang compound, or shooting up a Valentino bar in which we can see a gang member on fire chasing after V. Pretty cool stuff. We additionally get some new melee clips with V using a katana, a sledgehammer, and then boxing against an Animals gang member. Some decent variety with extended clips of scenes that we had seen before in past trailers. Also, if it's not clear where this combat gameplay came from, it was Game Live Japan 2020, and the quality isn't the best because the footage was actually not full screen. Either way, as you can see on the screen, I did cut up the new segments that were featured, and it is just over a minute in length, and besides the type of weapons, we do see V and a couple of the previously revealed boss fights going up against Animals leader Sasquatch and Maelstrom leader Royce. In addition to that, these scenes showcase us attacking Maelstrom, Valentinos, Tiger Claws, Animals, Wraiths, and 6th Street gang members, as well as taking on the corporation Militech, so as I said before, some good variety here. but the latest merchandise partnerships for Cyberpunk 2077 have been revealed, the first being a new Johnny Silverhand action figure, a part of the pop-up parade series coming from the Good Smile company, and second, if you guessed sneakers for one of these new merch partnerships, you guessed right, winning a pat on the back from me. But in all seriousness, Adidas have created some Cyberpunk shoes, which actually look pretty dope. But what's even more dope is a massive new interview coming from The Gamer, who sat down with Cyberpunk 2077's quest director Matusz Tomaszkiewicz. I probably said that horribly wrong, but he revealed some exclusive new information and features. So starting from the top, working our way down, the first new details provided are on the adult content present in the game. CDPR's quest director explains how working guys/gals are depicted in Night City. I think what's interesting about Moxes is it's like, I think saying it's a gang of adult workers is a bit of a simplification. It's like a group that was composed of people that were working for the gangs in the past, right? A lot of these type of workers were working for the gangs, but they wanted to become independent, so to speak. I like to think of them as a workers' union, basically, who can protect their own and they have their own territory and so on. A lot of different gangs dabble with having like dollhouses, for example. Also, when he says dollhouses, pretty much this sounds like a futuristic version of brothels. Dollhouses are this concept that is quite interesting in terms of the cyberpunk world. Imagine you have people who have specific cyberware that allows them to attune to their client, and after the job is done, it allows them to forget what they were doing during the session. Imagine that the adult worker, the doll, attuned to you, and they can realize your fantasies, deeply hidden desires, and things that are pushed into your subconscious. Maybe you don't even think about them too much. Some of them are also part of the Moxes, and they are gathering different kinds of workers throughout the city. Now, if you were curious if you could have cyberware down there, well, I have good news for you because the answer is yes. There are two that I think were even present in the old Cyberpunk 2020. I'm not 100% sure that's the case, but they were called, I think Mrs. Midnight is the version for woman. It's like a body part replacement cyberware. Also, there's breasts and all that. And then I think the male counterpart is Mr. Stud, I think, which is also that body part replacement. So Mr. Stud and Mrs. Midnight cyberware making your junk a little bit more shiny. Nice. Moving away from the raunchy details, at least for now, next we have more details on the NCPD and how they factor into the world. Tomaszkiewicz explains that the Night City Police Department is pretty corrupt. One of our designers always referred to them as another one of the gangs of Night City because they kind of operate that way. Although of course they operate within the law that is established in Night City, but the law of Night City is dictated by the corporations and for the interests of the corporations. So their prime interest is to secure the corporate interests with the richer districts. Of course, they will intervene when called by some poorer districts, but not as effectively, so to speak, and with less zeal. Maybe, at the same time, a lot of them are corrupt and they do look the other way with the gangs when they do their things, especially the gangs that are in bed with corporations. Although we would like to make a point that, even though that's the state of things in Night City, there are some good people there too. There are some characters that you will meet that are a little bit different in that regard, but there are like exceptions to the rule. Proceeding forward, we now have some insight into the Black Wall and what it actually is. This is a basic background on cyberspace, but as the CDPR developer explained, a legendary hacker years before the events of 2077 released the equivalent of malware that destroyed the web for everyone. In comes organization Netwatch, who develops the Black Wall. The idea was basically to contain the old web, to separate it out, and to create a new network for users that will be safe. They had to do this because it was not possible to just delete the old web, so they had to contain it, and the Black Wall is the thing that separates the old net from the new net. As this quest director teases, the Voodoo Boys aim to discover what's on the other side. It's said there are artifacts like old programs and many wild AIs that have been left alone for many years. One of those potentially being Ald Cunningham, ex-girlfriend of Johnny Silverhand, and said to be one of the best netrunners of her time. Most notably though, everyone who has left this new web to discover the dark secrets of the other side have never returned, something that V will surely break. But on the subject of gangs, very interestingly, CDPR reveals that the gang battles that happen throughout are by design. It's explained that, to be honest, most of our content is handcrafted. It's mostly tailored. We don't really go into systemic, generated solutions that would generate some random conflicts across the city. Most of the stuff you see as you travel through Night City, like in The Witcher 3, is handcrafted and custom made by us. And I actually think that's for the best, especially since these gangs have stories to tell, and in other open world games, procedural generation doesn't really mix things up enough. I guess the concern would be how repetitive could these encounters get, although since each one is by design, then it doesn't seem that should be too much of a worry, especially since a great emphasis is on replayability. Continuing on the subject of gangs, the gamer asks, how will our choices with these gangs of Night City impact how they treat us? Like, if we make certain decisions, could they shoot us on sight? And CDPR responds saying that it depends on the situation, I would say. I don't want to go into spoilers area, but it's not the case that if you start fighting with a gang, you will be unable to do a job for them. Although some of them might remember what you did, and they will actually hold a grudge, so to speak. It really depends. Like I mentioned before, most of our content is custom made, it's hand-tailored, so it really depends on a specific quest and situation. Lastly, this interview wraps up with the developer teasing that it's possible that decisions we make early on with a gang could impact us later. It explains how there are short-term consequences, like an immediate gunfight breaking out, but also long-term consequences, which are moments that will pop up when we least expect it. Now to the final section of this video, we have a few really interesting details that were revealed during the post-show of Night City Wire Episode 3, in which CDPR senior quest designer Projekt was interviewed for about a half an hour. The most striking comment, which has ignited many reactions, came when he revealed that the story of Cyberpunk 2077 would be shorter due to criticism that they got from The Witcher 3.
Angry Fat Vegan's wondering, how many hours of gameplay are we looking at?
That username.
Ooh. Oh, these questions. In terms of hours, I don't really have an answer for you right now on that. We're playing through the game right now, but you know, between the difference between a completionist run and a main story run, we do know that the main story run in Cyberpunk 2077 is slightly shorter than Witcher 3, because we got a lot of complaints about Witcher 3's main story just being too long. And looking at the metrics, you see tremendous numbers of people played through that game really far, but never made it to the end. We want you to see this whole story. So we did shorten the main story, but we have lots to do. And in terms of a completionist campaign, I just don't have that number.
While this is definitely garnering lots of reactions now, this isn't entirely surprising, as it's been hinted at before that the story would or could be shorter, as there is a greater emphasis on replayability. Regardless, looking at the publicly available data that we do have, it appears that less than half of players on PlayStation completed the main narrative of The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt, which is likely why CDPR decided to better tighten things up this time around. So what we know is that the story is less than 50 hours, although still no idea on exact length. Although I'd imagine somewhere in the 30-hour range, but what I'm hoping for the most is just a great and enjoyable narrative. Another big detail that we got was on the revelation that a Gwent-sized minigame is in fact in the game, and CDPR is keeping it secret.
Asking if there's going to be any kind of minigame situation like a Gwent.
Oh, well, you know, we haven't really talked about this very much. There is something like that in the game that I can't really talk about, but if you're looking for Gwent, you might want to look for the single player or the multiplayer Gwent. You can get it on GOG.com.
So what's really interesting about these remarks is that in the past, CDPR has indicated to the contrary of a Gwent minigame coming to Night City, but this is where wording matters, because they have not said that a minigame in the scope and size of Gwent would not be present. So right now, fist fighting, street racing, hacking are among the minigames that we know of, but none of them come off as something as big as Gwent, so there definitely has to be something big that they are hiding. But one really big achievement with Cyberpunk 2077 from a technical perspective is the lack of loading screens. Many games rely on players slowly walking through small cracks in a wall or taking elevator rides. These are supposed to be hidden loading screens, but sometimes it's not very subtle. Either way, Mills would explain that elevators in Night City are actually not loading screens, and that there's a reason why not all of the buildings in the game are accessible for players, basically quality over quantity.
So in terms of loading screens, I actually heard Alana talking about the elevators in the city. I want to actually clarify something. We don't really do any, like, those elevators are, that's actually to move you from place to place, because the city is so big, and
if those aren't loading
does have
screens,
that verticality.
How?
Our engineers are very, very clever, and I could not tell you the answer to that because they're much smarter than I am. But in terms of that, we don't really have loading screens for moving around the city. If you're doing fast travel or being moved, something like that, there may be a short one, depending on the scenario. But we really don't like loading screens, and we don't want those to get in the way while you're moving around. It's not going to be the kind of game where you open a door and now there's a loading screen. As for the question about buildings being accessible, I think this is one of those things, buildings are accessible when they need to be accessible. Having every building be accessible is actually something that I think is something that everybody thinks they want, and if you actually play a game, like, I've tried it myself. If you actually play a game where every room is accessible, you're going to have to use procedural stuff to make that happen. And again, CD Projekt, we're all about bespoke design. We're all about handcrafting everything. And we don't want to waste your time.
But the final clip that we do have, this is on all the main romances being shown in marketing material already.
How many romance options are there?
Ooh, how many romance options are there? So we wanted to make sure that there's a variety of romance options, that we have different archetypes and sort of different characters and different sexual orientations. And it's a little bit of a tricky question as well, because we also have romances, and we also have a few like casual encounters and that sort of thing. So in lieu of giving you a specific answer, I'm going to say there's a number. There's a number. I will say this. I'll give a little mystery to solve for everybody in Twitch chat. We have so far revealed all the main romance options. You've seen them all. Now go watch the trailers and try to figure out which ones they are.
So who is and isn't a romance option is the guessing game that everyone is playing right now. Jackie is an obvious one, Johnny Silverhand is the only confirmed one not to be, Judy Alvarez and Militech agent Meredith Stout are all but confirmed, Nomad Guy and Girl are also very likely to be main romances. That leaves us with a lot of characters that could or could not be. Takamura, maybe, Bartender Pepe, it's possible, Dancing Girl in the Club with V, again another possibility, Evelyn Parker, Arthur Jenkins, Placide, and T-Bug could also be options. As I said before, it really is just a guessing game. For now though, our sights are on Night City Wire Episode 4, which should be coming in a few weeks, and of course, we're getting very close to the release of Cyberpunk 2077, a game that potentially could change this video game industry and the expectations that gamers have for developers and publishers. Anyway, let me know your thoughts on everything that we discussed today down in the comment section below, but thank you for watching. Make sure to leave a like if you did enjoy this video or found any informative value, and make sure to follow my other social media accounts for updates on new videos. Links are always down in the description below. I'm most active on Twitter, giving opinions on news that I do not always get in video form, so do make sure to follow me over there. Also check out my Discord for all sorts of discussion on games, and again, thank you for joining, consider subscribing for more videos like this, and I'll see you later.